What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. As always, I'm Joe Nissim, with me is my brother from another mother, Mr. David Fuchs. His
What's up?
beard
What's
is
up?
looking good. My beard is looking. I've been growing it out so I can go to the barber to get some lines.
Oh yeah.
Like it's nice and thick. I'm like, it actually, I think it looks darker when it grows a little longer, except for these parts right here.
Yeah.
These
No,
are
I remember
getting
when I remember.
mighty white.
I remember when we were going through my cycle with you, and you used to be clean shaven.
Yeah,
And like one class, like it was like after like the winter break that we took, we were gone for like a week. You come back with, a little gruff, and I was like, oh wow, I like the look on you, and you haven't gone back since.
I know. It's one pretty woman said it looks good, and that was it for me.
That's what happened with me too.
That's it.
That's
That's all I
exactly
needed.
that's
So,
exactly what happened with me.
so let's chat a little CFP. And right now we're we're kind of in between cycles at this point. And if you're kind of studying, you're probably getting to this point where you probably had this moment. Studying like this isn't working for me. I got to do something else. And I feel like this is every CFP student, that you get started, you start doing some practice questions, you keep getting them wrong. What do you do now? You remember this as you in part of yours? Like, I got to do something different.
Yeah, I mean that happens like with anything. Like that happens with anything. It can be like whether you're obviously prepping for this exam or I mean you're learning to play a sport, golf, pickleball, whatever it is you play right now. Like whatever it is always like going to be like hiccups in the road and then you're like, "Oh, well, I need to change the way I'm prepping or I need to change the way I'm learning something." And sometimes you go and change it and sometimes you don't and you try and stick with it. And I
So,
guess
so what is your what's your thought on this? Are you a person that is like, you get to a block in the road and you start changing things? Or are you the type of person that goes to a block in the road and you're like, okay, this is part of the process. It kind of stinks, like the beginner's luck or the beginner's uh
the opposite of that.
the honeymoon period is now over, and now we're kind of getting into the thick of it, and this is kind of just the process with anything. It kind of stinks. It's just boring. It's hard to get motivated to study. What do you think in terms of where CF peers make mistakes here?
I mean, I would actually say it kind of depends on the situation and the person because I would say most of the time, if you come up with a process or you come up with a strategy, however you're going to try and accomplish whatever goal it is that you're trying to accomplish, just stick with it. We tell our clients all the time, we came up with a financial plan for you. We are invested this way for a reason. Just because the market's down this year, just because you have one bad investment, that doesn't mean go change everything. So there's that point of view. There's also another point of view where it's like you need to actually look and see because maybe your process or your plan that you came up with actually does suck and
Hmm,
you do need to change it. So
yeah.
I think it's kind of a case by case basis. Most of the time, though, I would say you have to kind of stick with whatever the plan is that you and whoever is instructing you came up with, especially if you're working with someone like you,
Hmm.
like or whoever Danko or Dalton or whoever else you're using, stick with that plan, stick with that process. Don't just go up and change it. But most of the time, I'd say stick with it. But I think it's kind of case by case.
I think that there's basically a two-pronged approach to this, which is, if you can't like put your study plan into two sentences or less, it's probably too complicated.
What do
So,
you mean? Yeah.
meaning that, like, oh, on some days I do this, and then when I'm done with this, I do this, and then when I'm done with this, I do this. And if your study plan is jumping from study tool to study tool to study tool, then it's probably too complicated, and you're not getting deep enough into any single study tool for it to be valuable.
Mhm.
So, and I've seen people who are like, I watch the video, and then I go back and watch the video again, and then from there I'll jump to a flashcard, and then from the flashcards I'll go into the quick sheets, and then from the quick sheets and I'm just like, at no point have they done the most basic tasks, which is read the book or read a book. But and a lot of us will do anything it takes to avoid reading the book because it's so dry and boring, and in fairness, like some of the language sometimes that it's written, it just makes you feel like an idiot. And so I see people who have 4 or 5 or 6 different things that they're doing, and in reality, you should have 3 study tools. And I believe that everybody should have the book as part of their study tools, some version of a flashcard, and some version of drills. Okay, that's study tools. I'm not talking about the QBank because the QBank is not a study tool. The QBank is an examination tool that tests to see where you are. So I think 2 to 3 study tools. If you have more than that, number one, simplify your plan, and then you got to go deep in it. And I see people do this all the time, whether it's a FINRA exam where they'll go through questions and then they're going, I don't understand why I'm getting this wrong. And then sometimes I'll point it out in the book and they look at me like, oh my God, you mean all this stuff is in the book? Holy crap, it's been here all along. And I'm like, yeah, it's right there. I promise it's not. But the hard part is having enough energy to keep going back to the book and rereading the same thing over and over again. You'll get a little bit more out of it every single time, but it's being motivated enough to kind of keep banging at it and
Just to
doing it
stick with it, just to
and
like stick with what
trusting it.
like the original like plan was.
Yeah.
But and just to like add on to that, we're talking about whatever your process was, whatever your strategy was, and to kind of stick with it. Another reason why to stick with whatever you originally came up with is I think that, just for me, I remember like taking exams as a kid or even on the first time I took this exam, and you go ahead and you're like changing your process. You're like, well, I'm going to study at this time. Now I'm going to change that to that time, or oh, I'm going to use the book, but now I'm going to use the QBank or whatever it was. The change causes more stress and pressure than
Oh,
actually, than the process of like actually studying.
dude, incredible point. And it reminds me of when I was competing in weightlifting, we had a guy in our team who was the best guy on our team. And he was that way for probably the first 2 years we were all lifting weights. The dude weighed 130 pounds and was clean and jerking like 250, 260, getting into the 275 range. He was tiny, but was like super talented, like so good at weightlifting. And then there's another guy on the team who started to pass him, and it was like something clicked off in his brain, and I don't know, maybe he wasn't the best anymore, so he just started second guessing it, and he started changing his technique, and he started working with this other coach to change his technique. And then when it wasn't getting him the instant result that he wanted, like 2 months later, he changed it again. And I remember we were down in Georgia and he was working with another coach and then another coach. And I remember there was this coach, he literally was like, and I'm gonna not say his name out for obvious reasons,
Just
but
say it, just reveal it, Joe.
you
Come
know,
on.
his
Shout about.
and he was like, he is the most refined lifter of your group. He was just like, he's too much in his head. And that way he hit the nail on the head. And literally he watched every single one of us. And where I started, I was not the best guy on the team. I was probably in the lower echelon. When I passed him, he went absolutely nuts because I was like the lowest guy in the totem pole, and I started creeping up to being one of the best guys on the team. But it took me 2.5 years of working flexibility and doing all these squat exercises. And I'm sitting there like doing all this boring stuff over and over and over again. And he literally was like, I'd watch him in awe, and then eventually I'm like legitimately way better. I didn't do anything special, and this was the guy who was more refined than all of us. And if you're coming in as somebody who is got your Series 7 on the first try, got your 66 on the first try, you're likely the person that's most prone to this, to switching your tactics, because you're used to doing things quickly and easily. And if you have a lot of experience, you're going to see that you're going to go, oh, I'm used to picking up things quickly and easily because you have so many years under your belt. That doesn't give you the license to start changing everything up the second it doesn't work. You got to still plug through, keep at it. And that's what's going to lead to success. It's all the boring stuff, the stuff that you don't want to do most of the time, that ends up leading to success, not the super duper and like you see it around like on some of the websites. They're like, like learn these concepts in 36 hours. It's kind of like, the way Duolingo and Babbel sell their like language platforms. It's like, be conversational in Spanish in 7 days or less. Like, look, I want to be conversational in Spanish in 7 days or less, but what they're referencing is being this amount of conversational in Spanish in 7 days,
Right.
like, so kind of set the expectation there that you're going to have to plug away at it, and it's just not pretty, but it works. So just keep it simple and focus. And now you focus on something for a bit of time and it's not working, then you need to change for sure.
Right.
But if you're wholeheartedly in it and it's it's just moving slow or not the pace you want it doesn't give you the license. And I agree with you, man. The changing is worse. It feels like you're starting over again.
Exactly.
All right, everybody. We hope this episode was helpful. Again, any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to David or myself.